to let folks in as they show up.
Awesome. Well, welcome everyone to our very first ABMA Behavior Month Zoom. I'm Justin. I'm one of the board members on ABMA, joined by Chris, another board member. And so we're the guinea pigs. This is our very first, not Behavior Month, but it's our very first Zoom series for Behavior Month. So we wanted to find new ways to connect everybody all over the world to share information and learn. And so this is our first go in this format, and Chris will be sharing in the chat later on in the Zoom a link to a survey, because we want everybody's feedback. We want to hear what you liked, what we could do better for each week and each year that we do these. So we're gonna try to keep this at an hour as best we can, and the basic format that we're going to do is we have a special speaker every week. As most of you probably already saw, each week of Behavior Month has a different theme. This week, week one, is cooperative care. And with that, we're going to have a special guest expert speaker. Today, we have a good one, Valder, who is, camera's on, you guys. If you don't know him, most of you probably do. But if you don't know him, definitely a good guy to get some advice, information from, and then we'll go through each contributor that's here from the week, and they can kind of give a little more detail or a summary of what they contributed on social media. And then the remaining time, we definitely want some just free, laid-back discussion, questions and answers. That's kind of our vision. So I don't talk too long, and Valder can kick us off here by talking a little bit about cooperative care from his experiences.
Wow, no pressure, right? First time, let's try this. I think I also won't take too much time, because look at the panel of people we have already sitting around here. And I think that's just, it's cool to see everybody be part of such an important piece of what we're doing. You know, training tends to be looked at from many different ways, but ideally everything is starting with cooperative, cooperative training. I love that conversation style of training, to where we ask the animals, because I think that for me is really the idea of cooperative care in any direction, is asking the question, how could you work with me on this, or could you work with me on that? And like we said in the podcast, any care where you give the animal a choice, or give the animal some control over their environment through the choices they can make, that for me is a cooperation, right? We work together to get to this common goal. As you know, this is my second language, so I had to kind of look up what cooperative care is, just like many of our training things, sure that we always go back to the science and really look at what we're talking about. I had great coffee with Sarah Duggar this morning after the podcast we just listened to the other day, and just going back, grounding into science, going back to the books. We even brought the Paul Chance book with us to try to go back to what did these guys do, man, 60, 70, 80 years ago. They figured this out already. So there's got to be some really cool stuff there. So when I think about cooperative care, I think we're talking about, we're thinking about blood draws, but even like I said in the podcast, even shifting in and out for a reinforcer is really what we're looking for. That cooperation of, hey, I have an idea. I have this really cool environment that is full of free operants, as we're talking about right now. We just talked with heard Ryan Cartledge's great podcast with Susan Friedman and Rick Hester on free operants. There's a whole other thing we need to talk about. Reinforcers that are freely available in the environment that we provide, and us asking the animal to come out and participate for a little bit, and then go back into this environment, which is rich. If you have a chance, go listen to it. It's amazing. So yeah, cooperation. Getting that animal to kind of come with us. Hey, I need some of your blood. Would you mind coming in? And then how do we build that? We build on a really cool foundation of training knowledge. Of a great trainer is just somebody that really applies the basics of science, of behavior science change really well. So going back to how to ask that animal to participate, how do we give that animal an opportunity to say, hey, I would like to give you some blood. Or, hey, I'm not ready right now. And then once the animal says, not ready right now, how do we then rearranged our environment, our current conditions, to see if that animal is more likely to do it in a different situation. So it's cool. I think there's so many different directions. And if you look at all the people that participated this week for this year, you can see all the different directions that cooperative care can go. So yeah, for me, it's all about a conversation style of training and putting the basics down in such a cool way.
Hey,
And
Valder,
keeping science at the base of it. Yeah, go ahead.
so not to show my age, but I think you and I first met like it had to be like 2004 or something. So things have changed in our world, right? Since then, what would you say? Because you've worked and consulted lots of different facilities all over the place. So cooperative care used to not be in our jargon, if you will, back then. So is there a difference between husbandry behaviors and cooperative care, or is cooperative care now the term that takes over for husbandry, and why?
I like to look at it from the other direction. I think that's great. I think it's a great question. I think when I think about the difference, I think we get a little, what is that? We're getting so hot on new terminology. You know, oh, there's a new word for this and a new word for that. And this is so cool and that is so cool. I think we did do a lot of cooperative care back then. But right now, over the last couple of years, we've been really talking about choice and control and really thinking about how do I ask this animal if they want to participate? How do I set the environment up for that? And how do I give the animal an opportunity to say no, thank you right now? And I think when we started, we did it kind of from a art of the application, but now the science is backing us up. The Susan Friedmans and the Ken Ramirez's that are coming behind us going, hey, this is how this works. And these are how these things go. So some people might discuss, and for me, this is a great discussion in a bar over a drink or at a conference. Hey, what do you think, husbandry or cooperative care? I think all care, all training is cooperative if you do it well. As soon as you stop the dialogue, now we're starting about using aversives or making an animal do something or anything else. So I think it kind of falls in line with our discussion about choice and control. I hate saying it in one line. I think we need to I love to say control and choice, because through choices, we give animals more control over their environment, right? And so it's not one word, it's not one concept. It is give the animals more choices. And through more choices, the animal controls the environment a little bit better. And I think that's the same difference that we're talking about is husbandry. I think as long as we ask the questions of the animals, as long as we have that communication, I think we have cooperative care as well.
This is why we wanted Valder on the Zoom, because I was going to ask you, is choice and control the same? But I didn't have to. You went right into it. So thank you for that. So we'll continue talking to Valder. He's going to be here the whole time. But we definitely want to give all of the contributors a minute or two or three to just tell us a little bit about what you shared and we shared on the ABMA page, and you're doing at your facilities and with your animals. I will note, though, before we start, for everybody, that Cooperative Care Week is not fully concluded yet. So we actually have we have more content to share before the week's over. So you have seen most of it because we're on Friday, but we do still have more to come. And we can keep this conversation going lots of different ways on Facebook page, and we all have contact info and things as well. But without further ado, Ryan is next in my view. So why don't we start with Ryan and your content for this week?
Well, we're Saturday here in New Zealand, so we're in the future. Well, hello everyone, and thank you for having me during ABMA's Behavior Month. And Justin and Chris and Ellie and the awesome panel of people here. I'm representing the Animal Training Academy, my business. Earlier this week, ABMA showcased a little something I put together called Get Unstuck, 5 ideas to help when you hit rough patches in your training, because we've all been there, right? Those moments when training feels like a little bit of an uphill battle. But here at the Animal Training Academy, we see those hiccups as golden opportunities. Our main mission is to give you, and with this webinar, to give the viewers the confidence to sail through those challenges, making life better for both our non-humans and us. So dive into that webinar. You'll find some nifty tools to keep you resilient, organized, and always learning. A bit about us, the Animal Training Academy. We've been championing a most positive, least intrusive philosophy since 2015. It's been a wonderful journey, supporting thousands along the way. With a little nudge from us, our members don't just level up their skills, they spread positivity to both two-legged learners, four-legged learners, and however many legged learners you might be working with. In the webinar we shared, you'll learn to 1, boost your confidence by celebrating your approximations. 2, refine your decision-making to be more adept. 3, grow your knowledge by embracing a positive training vocabulary. Funny we're just talking about that. 4, use tools like flowcharts to enhance your training skills. And 5, the resounding most hitting element of the webinar, because I get constant feedback about it, is understanding the importance of a solid self-care plan. The webinar is packed with insights, and if these topics have piqued your interest, I'd say the free webinar is your next step. Or if anyone's been toying with the idea of joining us at ATA, we only roll out the welcome mat twice a year to new members. I have open enrollment periods, and our next enrollment period is just around the corner in 3 days to be exact. If you're interested in learning more, head to www.atamember.com to get on the waitlist, and then keep those eyes glued to your inbox for more info. At ATA, we dream big. We see a world where trainers don't just get by, they thrive. They're unshakable, they're knowledgeable, skillful, and confident, ready to positively influence all the animal and human learners they encounter. So I'm absolutely buzzing to be here with ABMA this month and with all of you, and this great panel, as Valda said, in this first ever Zoom session today. I can feel that we're all on the same page, sharing this vision and rolling up our sleeves to bring it to life. So thanks for having me, Justin, Chris, Ellie, and the ABA crew. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for participating. We have lots of great content this year, so everybody contributing definitely makes for a wealth of information, knowledge, videos, animals. Okay, so who wants to go next out of our contributors? Kimberly, you want to?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I love that you guys are doing this, because it was a wonderful opportunity for our zoo. Actually, let me start with an introduction. I'm Kimberly Laser, the Animal Welfare and Behavior Manager here at the Oklahoma City Zoo. And it was a great opportunity for us to stop and look at our program and see where we started and where we have gotten to. I think sometimes when you're in the thick of things, you're just kind of like putting out fires and you're chatting about things, and it's nice to just put a pin in that. And that's really what our contribution was about, was stopping for a minute and seeing really what did our program look like, and where have we taken it, and where do we think we're going to go with it. As my esteemed colleagues have already talked about, cooperative care is really a commitment to doing things the right way all the time. And it's sometimes easier said than done. There's a lot of outside influence and things like that, but being able to move from a reactive stance to a proactive stance, looking for opportunities that you can make a difference, looking for opportunities that you can give animals agency, really then empowers your staff and your animals to continue to progress and live in that culture of animal well-being. So really, that was what our contribution was about, was taking that minute and looking to see where we've come and where we're going to be going.
Awesome. Thank you. Sue, if you want to, there she is.
Hey. Yeah, we'll go next. Thank you so much for having us. My name is Sue Kathleen. I'm the curator of behavioral husbandry here at the zoo, and I brought Devin Kopp with me, the associate curator of primates. And I guess this is a little teaser because you haven't seen our content yet. So our content will be shared tomorrow. So I think this is a first for Zoo Tampa being part of Behavior Month. So we're super excited to get more involved and to share what we're doing, because we're doing some really awesome things. And we decided to share a cooperative behavior with our male Bornean orangutan Go Young. And Devin here was a part of training Go Young how to participate in a voluntary nebulizer treatment. So I'm going to let Devin kind of talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so Go Young is our male orangutan, as Sue said, and he suffers from orangutan respiratory disease syndrome. So one of the biggest things that we had to train him to do to participate in his care is to train a nebulizer treatment. So it's a very long duration behavior. It's about 10 to 20 minutes a day, twice a day, that we ask him to come over and participate in nebulizer treatment. So I would say 99.9% of the time he chooses to come over and participate and sit with us. He has total choice and control in the situation. He can go and interact in his environment. He can go hang out with the other orangutans or forage for food. But we've really been able to treat him with these nebulizer treatments.
I think what's really, really neat about our approach is we taught him to wrap his lips around. We actually use a human nebulizer and taught him to inhale, and we can visibly see the exhale coming out of the nose. And we're actually really excited. Shortly in a week or so, we're going to have some veterinarians from BOSS, right, from our conservation partners, and we're going to be teaching one of our other orangutans from scratch and bringing them in on that process so they can go back and take all of those skills with them to teach their staff.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's a good one. I've seen the video, so I definitely encourage everybody to check it out when it's shared tomorrow. Kelly, you're right next door, at least in my view.
Hi, I am Kelly. Thank you so much for having me here today. I am a humble keeper at the Santa Barbara Zoo in Southern California. I shared my experience training our domestic guinea hog in open mouth behavior. I was inspired by a challenge set forth by Barbara's force-free training. She is our liaison for the zoo and our main contact. She comes to our zoo 2 to 3 times a year to work with us through behaviors that are going well, behaviors that aren't going well, and behaviors that haven't even started. And on her website, she posted this challenge of 5 days to successfully work an animal through an open mouth behavior. And I had a candidate that loved to open his mouth on his own. I wanted to see if I could capture it and use that. And I also wanted to do the challenge to see how quickly I could train something. I never really challenged myself with a deadline. It's just been more free-flowing goals based on a need rather than sort of diving into something for fun. So it was really exciting to go through that process, see how it worked for me, see how I could flex it to meet the needs of my animal, and go from there.
Awesome. So at least in my view, it looks like we have met every contributor that's at least on this meeting. I don't know if anybody else has been let in since I was listening. So looks like we did. Okay, so we have lots of other folks that have joined us. So this would be the point that we wanted to open it up to just general cooperative care discussion. And if you have questions for Valder or any of the contributors, they're all here. Does anybody have any questions? Probably the best way to do it would be if you throw your hand up. Chris and I can kind of go through and go hand by hand for questions. So we'll give everybody a second, or in chat. We're watching the chat too.
I have a question, Justin, for the participants, and I'm just curious to know, in terms of cooperative care and husbandry, what are the 2 biggest challenges people face?
That's a good one.
I'll jump in at least with one. I think the number one thing we always hear is time. Time is always something that gets brought up. We don't have time. How do we find the time? There's a lot of pressures and a lot of competing challenges. And one of the most successful things we've done is really try to break out of that mentality of everything happens in a training session. If you're truly working on cooperative care, then every encounter and non-encounter you have with your animals is an opportunity for cooperative care and influencing behavior. So if you can break down those boundaries and those walls that you have up, I really think you can really then bridge that cooperative care, and you find that you do have time as you're doing your other things to make that influence. And then you wind up getting more time because things are going well. So I think time is one of the top ones I hear.
I can relate.
If I can add to that, I wholeheartedly agree with the time thing. And we do have, limited resources and a lot of animals. I think part of it too is everybody, or a lot of the trainers, like our staff is excited about training. So I think we've shifted the culture enough that we want to do things and we want to have these goals, but they think it has to be this like super structured, this very specific behavior, when it can look like, hey, if we just switch your routine and you feed in this way, or we adjust some things, you can still make progress on something that could maybe lead you there to the future. So it doesn't have to be like, oh, I have to train this very specific thing. It could be just something very small.
I feel like, just for me to chime in, I feel like years back, sometimes the vet staff could be a challenge to work with and train. But I do feel like a positive change over the years. I think that's less and less, at least from my personal experiences. Vet staff seem to be really on board nowadays, and that's been a positive change that I've seen over the years. But that used to be a challenge at times. Has anybody? How about? Sue brought up a really good point about just a culture change. Has anybody else experienced that as being a challenge? The people challenge versus the animal challenge?
I think that's what, Behavior 360 is training the trainers. And I think what we see often is really that cultural change is not something that happens in a week, right? Cultural change happens over time. And that is the biggest challenge with, like I bet you Barbara does it in Santa Barbara. That sounds funny. That that they're working through it, and she's there a couple times a year to really change the culture, the way we look at training, and like we like to talk about here is that we want to talk about cultural change comes over time, and it comes with making mistakes together and having successes together and celebrating those successes and understanding that. For us as consultants, the trainers are really the animals that we want to teach. And the more we use positive reinforcement and the more we keep encouraging each other, the more we're seeing that cultural change. And that includes the vets, Justin, I know it wasn't just overnight. All of a sudden the vets goes, no, now you're cool. Now we're good to go. I usually say, give me a tech that's really interested. And slowly we get that tech interested in doing all the injection behaviors. And then a second tech becomes part of it. And then the vet becomes part of it. Yeah. So over time, that cultural change happens. So yeah, it usually is the biggest challenge. And I don't expect a huge cultural change within a year. But after 4 to 5 years, you should be able to, like you see at Zoo Tampa, I think, that you over time, Thad and Angie have helped that program move up and move on. And now all of a sudden we're talking training like it is raking and cleaning and feeding and enrichment and all those things. So yeah, it's cool to see the profession standard move up that way.
I didn't see Ryan's hand up there.
Yeah, firstly, Sue, congratulations on your cultural change in your organization. It's really cool to hear about that. As Valda said, that doesn't happen overnight. So you can appreciate the intense amount of approximations that go into us being able to say that. And I sort of build on what Valda said about celebrating your successes and also mistakes, and the fact that it doesn't happen overnight, and that we don't have enough time, which is the umbrella conversation that we're having right now. And the first thing we talk about in the webinar I shared is to celebrate your approximations. And I think with time and culture change and getting vets on board, our vision is often that end goal. We need this vet to be cooperating with this thing. We need this culture change. We need this behavior. But to get there, you require each of those tiny approximations. And sometimes they're making mistakes so that you have more information so you can make better decisions next time. But I think a great way to overcome how that makes you feel not having enough time is to actually reach for our training toolbox and know that shaping is one of our most powerful tools, and we shape behavior through successive approximations. And often we forget, as learners ourselves, as Valda said, we're training the trainers, but we're also learners. Each one of us here is a learner. And the only way we're going to get to where we want to get to is through approximations. And I think you can change how you feel about all of these things by remembering to celebrate and attempt to reinforce all of those approximations along the way, as we are already doing with all of our non-human learners. So it's kind of flipping the script and putting it on yourself, and you can really change how you feel, I think, about the whole process and about the concept of time and about the concept of reaching your end goals by remembering to celebrate your own approximations, and you're being shaped and everyone's being shaped as well.
I think that's really well said, Ryan. And yeah, I mean, like it can feel, I'm sure we all can relate, right? Like it can feel overwhelming because really we're not just looking to influence the behavior of the animals, but if you find yourself in a change maker position, you're also having to influence the behavior of all of the humans around you that have a stake in whatever animal you're managing or helping. So you're kind of doing double duty, which can be overwhelming, but also can be done and has been in many cases, as we just saw. So to kind of change gears a little bit, I think a really important thing to bring up, because I know, like, thinking back when this was all brand new to me, I'm still learning now, but when it was brand new to me, and now, you know, I'm around other new people that it's brand new to them, the word voluntary, I think that's worth talking about a little bit, right? Because it is, as Valder was saying, almost like choice and control. It's kind of thrown around a lot. And I don't know that, I think, you know, explaining it more, what it looks like to those newer folks is a helpful thing, because you can call anything voluntary, but how do you know? And I know it's going to be specific to animal and situation, but how about, who has like a good way of explaining that to somebody that's brand new? What does voluntary look like?
I'll actually say I don't like the term voluntary. I prefer cooperative, because I do think our animals are cooperating with us. But I do think that there are some exceptions. I think there are times to have voluntary. We have an orangutan who is very eager to participate in blood draw, and so he will pretty consistently offer his arm in that way. So in that way, I would say he is similar to somebody going to the blood bank and offering to give that. But personally, that's become a little bit of a pet peeve of mine, as I do prefer cooperation and cooperative care, because I think it's a better definition of what we're truly trying to achieve with our animals.
I have to admit,
a personal thing.
No, I was just gonna say, I have to admit, like I agree with you on that. But even though that's what I prefer, it's out there, right? Like people are hearing it, and new people learning are hearing it, and sometimes even us old folks, right? Like we hear it too. So I think I just wanted to bring it up to get everybody's opinions and experiences.
At the end of the day, whichever definition you choose to use, I think it really comes down to what everybody was saying about that choice, that option. And I think to achieve that, the animal needs to understand what's going on. There needs to be some transparency between what's going on. And so if you're getting something because you're distracting the animal on one side and they're really not too sure what's going on, it's not bad training. Sometimes that's a way to get there. But if you truly want it to be cooperative, I think there needs to be a level of awareness that the animal has of what's going on in that environment, and that they also have the opportunity to not participate. So that's how I described it to my staff, is it has to contain those two elements.
Yep, it makes sense to me. And I think, you know, it's an individual, what's best for the individual in those scenarios. And the distracting thing is a whole conversation too, which we can have, we have time. But you know, what I usually tell people that I'm working with is, if we distract, we just do it knowing that you're distracting. Don't distract thinking that it's something other than that. I saw somebody else's hand there a second ago, but it might have gone down. I see Valder. No, you lit up.
I can talk about it if you like.
I saw you writing. I'm like, Valder's thinking. Let's hear.
No, I like listening. I think, you know, it's that whole, like, if you listen to everybody else, you pick up so much more. I appreciate what everybody's saying, because I think it's even for me, my brain goes to the difference between voluntary and a cooperative. You know, you volunteer, you give it up. I try to bring all these words way back to the basis, right? What does it look like? Susan asks that question all the time. What does voluntary look like? And I really appreciated Kimberly's like example of it. Like, well, he just came over and he offered it up, right? He's volunteering. Here, take some more blood. But if I take that even further back and I just look at the behavior of sticking out the arm, and consequence is a reinforcer, and then giving blood and consequence is a high value reinforcer, then if we look at that and just fill in the species, it doesn't even have to, well, it has to have an arm, I guess, but something there. It just says like there's behavior that has been trained really well, and the reinforcers are predictable. The antecedent environment is me walking up with my treat pouch, and the clearest communication I've given is if you give me your arm, then you're going to get high value reinforcers. Yeah, you can give me your back or anything else, and the value will be lower. But if I keep that up, that communication has happened, right? So if it's voluntary or if it's cooperative, because we're doing this thing together, I think whatever we talk about it, I think the most important part are those elements of, like you said, the basis of training, right? How has it been trained? Is it worth it? Can the animal say no? And in this example, it's really clear that orangutan can just not put its arm through the thing, even when you ask for it, right? But what I like is to think about, so if he doesn't, we're still communicating. That's just not a no. That's just him going, not in this current environment. How can we get that next? Okay, cool. Well, let me up the ante. Let me take a smaller approximation. Let me work on our communication. Let me talk you through it again, right? And not that they hear our words, they hear Charlie Brown, but we talk with our behavior. We're the environment. So a smaller approximation gets a reinforcer, a bigger approximation gets a reinforcer, and we rebuild that behavior under current conditions. And I think that's the cool thing about it, is that it pretty much becomes voluntary as soon as that animal can move away, right? So as long as you have mesh and you do protected contact training, that's pretty much when you come up, it's voluntary. You're volunteering your time. You can do other things in the other environment, but come on up and we'll do a session. I think for me, the tricky thing is when we start going into motivation, and I can get any animal to come up if I just don't feed them all day, right? They'll come right up, no problem. Maybe not a bear and torpor or all those things, but it's about how do we create motivation that is there? Not only behavior in itself is reinforcing, it's what reinforcers do I use, and how do I build my environment up to where I can borrow them. I can take them away from those free operants, those reinforcers that are available freely in the environment, bring them in for a little bit, do a little bit of training, and then send them back out to where they happily continue on living. So there's a lot there to unpack. But yeah, that's I think the communication piece for me, where it goes.
And so would you say, Valder, that just clear contingencies, when you say clear communication, clear contingencies, the animal can predict what is being asked of it, what you're requesting, and what reinforcer or reinforcers they may earn. So just the clear, not because I see that sometimes, at least I think I see that sometimes. Lots of the contingency can change as trainers are learning. Keeping it clear to the animal is really a skill. It's easy to keep trying different things too frequently, and then the animal may never know what really you're asking because it's been reinforced for different things or hasn't been reinforced.
Right? Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you, but I think when I say communication, I think that piece is crappy communication on the trainer's perspective. So cooperative care comes with good communication. I don't really wonder about what the animal is thinking. I just look at what they're doing. That's my data collection, right? And so if I see behavior from the animal, fill in the blank. Again, it doesn't matter what species it is. But if you see behavior that is slow coming up to the mesh, I can go, oh man, he's being slow today. Or I can look at the behavior, the topography, and go, how do I increase moving to the mesh behavior with a reinforcer? And so that comes with trainer skill, that comes with trainer development. And maybe a lot of times for me, that just comes with, hey, can you come see my session? Can you help me out? Or can I videotape my session and send it to some people that know what's going on? So we really have trainer skill as much there as the animal skill. And I think a lot of these concepts are concepts we need to talk about with skilled trainers that have a lot of experience, because they can see what does hesitation look like, what are all these labels that we use look like, and how do we describe them better, and how do we keep looking at the animal's behavior. There's many times where, and I think Sarah said it so well in that last podcast when you talk about blood draws. I can get a blood draw behavior from a tiger maybe once, but we care about the first one. We high five each other, but science says if it's been reinforced, it's repeatable, right? So I love that you got the first one. High five, good job, amazing. But if you can get it again, now you've trained it well and behaviors maintain increase, that means we've been reinforcing it. So there's our data points when it comes to clear communication. So yeah, maybe that communication piece you're talking about is more about trainer development than it is about the training session between the animal and the person. And that's when I would go, hey, time out. Justin, step back from the animal. Let's talk about this first. Let me work on you as the animal first. And then let's get you back in front of an animal.
For sure. And by the way, for everybody here, I failed to say this earlier, but safe place. So like, no question, if you want to ask or contribute a thought, like there's no silly question. Speaking for myself, I mentioned how old I was earlier. I'm always learning. And sometimes somebody that is, it's their first training discussion, I learn a ton from, because I have to explain what I'm thinking. So I like to learn too. Throw it out there. There's no silly question for sure. Ryan.
Yeah, I had my hand up before, but I'm like louder. I like to listen. So I didn't say that it was me, because I kind of wanted Vouter to talk and everyone else to talk, so I can learn. Hey, Vouter, can I just check? Did you refer to yourself as Charlie Brown just then?
I wish, right? That'd be good. No, I always imagine when people are talking to animals, oh, come on, a little closer. You're doing all right. You're all right. I always want to remind people that the animal is not hearing those words. The animal is hearing Charlie Brown. Wah, 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 wah. No meaning behind the words. So they look more at the actions than they look at your words. That was the point. But I could be Charlie Brown, I guess.
I don't see.
Thank you. I'm glad I asked you to clarify that, because that's funny. Can I use that?
See any other hands. I'm sorry, Ryan. Did I cut you off?
No, I'm cool to listen. I mean,
there was like a weird blip in the Zoom. So, okay. I don't see any other hands now, so I'm going to throw this out here, because I would love to hear everybody's thoughts and about this. We had a recent discussion that goes right along with this. So there seems to be a camp of people that like to use like tell the animal what's going to happen. Let's just say like in a blood draw, and they use the word touch. And there was a good conversation that I was part of, not on a Zoom, just between a few of us. And there seemed to be very contrasting opinions and experiences about how do you know the animal actually knows what you mean by touch. I'm curious what everybody else here thinks, and maybe if you could describe what I'm talking about better, or have a real life example, that would be cool too. But I'm curious, Ryan.
Well, just kind of, I think this for me, where my thoughts have gone, when you've asked that question, tied back into what we were talking about before, and picking up on what Vouter said about what Susan offers us is, what does that look like? And so it makes me think about training and it being a conversation, as Vouter has said many times, and it's a moment to moment interaction. It's a conversation. I do this, you do this, I do this, you do this, I do this, you do this. And one of the things we talk about in that webinar I shared is flow charting. So what that looks like is drawing a flow chart. I do this, animal does this. I do this, animal does this. But at any part in that flow chart, there's always the possibility that the animal's not going to do what you expect. Animal does this. Yeah. So knowing what you're going to do if the animal does what you want and if it doesn't do what you want, that's where a lot of clarity can come in. But also, if you're going to say touch before you touch a tiger in your example, then it doesn't really, we can go to each other for opinions about what that means. But I'm stealing this from a horse trainer called Alexander Curlin. We need to go to the animals for answers. So we ask the animal, when I say touch, you do this, I do this, you do this. And I think we can talk about contingencies, we can talk about ABCs, we can talk about flowcharts, whatever tool we want to use. I think it's helpful to film your training, maybe, if that's one way that you can look at those moment-to-moment sessions.
Mm-hmm.
So when you say touch, what does the tiger do? Then what do you do? Then what does the tiger? And the tiger will answer your question rather than your peer or your manager or Ryan Cartledge or someone else you ask.
Next time I use that, I'm going to call you, Ryan. See what the animals think. I see Sue has her hand up.
Yeah, I just had a conversation this week about this very topic, actually. I had never utilized that a whole lot in my training. I like to be transparent. So, and I think someone had mentioned that earlier, like bringing everything to the table. So the blood box, the equipment, anything that you're going to be using, and properly desensitize that. So the animal knows, I mean, we're giving them all these contextual clues of what's going to happen, whether it's the lineup or, the vet tech and all these additional things. And our giraffe team is currently training the giraffe for some spray descents for some topical treatments. And they're using a touch cue. And when we talked about it, and, we kind of decided that for this particular species, because they are very flighty, to give them that little bit of additional information could be helpful, that they know that it's coming. But we don't typically use that in other scenarios. So I think it depends on the animals that you're working with and how they're responding to things. But yeah, we just had a conversation about that with our giraffe specifically.
Yeah, so I'm curious because I grew up a lot in the marine mammal world, not completely, and I know you did too, Sue. So I'm wondering if like that, it doesn't seem to be a common thing to my knowledge. Maybe I'm wrong. Somebody correct me if I am wrong. But it seems to be less common, at least historically, in the marine mammal world, and it was something that maybe was used more in the terrestrial world. And so I am completely open to it. Like, again, I like to learn. My question was, though, again, this was a hypothetical conversation that I had, but what does the animal do that lets you know that they have some understanding of it, just out of curiosity? So I am curious about the marine mammal thing. Are there any other Suzanne's here? Suzanne Smith is down there. She's a marine mammal person, if she can hear us. I'm curious if from other marine mammal trainers, if that seems to be a new thing to us, but not everybody. Anyway, people can chime in.
I know Kimberly's got her hand up too.
Oh, thank you, Wouter.
I don't know if you can see that or
I'm sorry, Kimberly.
And I tried to put mine up, but I don't know.
No, it was a good flow. I didn't want to interrupt the flow, but
no, go on.
To piggyback off of Sue, I agree, but I'm going to even take it one step further. Is we've been talking a lot about, we're having a conversation with our animals. But before we can have a conversation with our animals, we have to build a language with our animals. And that's what that touch doesn't have to, but can be, is building that piece. One of the things I love about our job is that there's so many different ways to do things. You can train things 15 different ways. And if it is a particular individual, whether that be the staff member or the animal that needs additional information, you may want to build that definition of that word touch or poke or whatever into that training. Doesn't mean that you're wrong if you don't do that because you've observed your animal and you see that your communication that you've set up is clear. No, you can do it either way. But I do agree there are certain individuals or maybe certain species that having that additional word definition can be very helpful. And that's exactly what it is. If you're teaching a language to something, how do they know a new word you're teaching? Well, you're going to introduce it at a particular time and then test it. So if we're doing a touch behavior and we want to introduce that, where you introduce that verbal cue to me is important. If you start at the very beginning, they're not going to understand what that is. But if you set up their scenario where there's a connection and they understand, well, that means the trainer is touching my flank or it's touching the side. Oh, now I add that verbal. Oh, that's what that is. hopefully there will be a click, and you should see, just like using a bridge or anything else, you should see individual behaviors. In some of our cats, it's as soon as we say touch, they actually lean further into us. Okay, well, that to me is an indication, yeah, that they actually understand what that means. For other animals, it may mean that they hold still, that they don't move away because they understand that touch is coming. And that's the criteria you've set up around that word. But it really goes back to that communication and that conversation. But before you do that, you have to build your words and you have to build your vocabulary so that you are having that communication and that conversation.
I like it. I see Valder's hand now.
I figured it out. I'm a learner every day.
I'm learning now.
It's pretty exciting. I can even put it down if I want to. Here, watch this. I got this thing. No, I'm one of the people that teaches that communication. And just like Kimberly said, for me, it's an additional communication. We started it, man, years and years ago with the cheetahs to really communicate because they head so far forward from where the hip is. I can see that with giraffe too. So such a long way to start touching them in a certain spot. I wanted that animal to say no or hold back or anything else. So we would shape in a touch behavior when we did an injection because we know every vet or every tech wants to feel where the muscle is. And so kind of before they do the injection. So we have a touch behavior first so the vet can go there, which was shaped, right? It's shaped through approximations by touching, and the first touch, not even touching the skin, just approximations towards that spot. And then we go to an injection as a sticking behavior. We will signal sticking, which means I'm going to puncture the skin with this needle. Ideally, you've done a lot outside of puncturing the skin. And in my teaching, usually it is the first time they get stuck is with the vet there. But a lot of times we'll do the sticking after that. That communication is there every time. So when I say touching and the animal moves away, that means that's great. She said no at that spot, which means at that approximation, I can relax my criteria and rebuild the behavior. I can imagine if I didn't have that communication, all of a sudden I started touching that animal. Really quickly, I go so far back in my approximations because that communication isn't there. So ideally, I go way back, and as much as I can ask the animal, are you good? We all good? Is that all good? Even though that might sound like Charlie Brown, we do that through behavior, right? We look at behavior. And so the behavior is touching, animal leans back. That means, okay, I'm not even going to touch you. I might reinforce you for staying, and I might increase my rate of reinforcement so you stay, and I might take smaller approximations. If you stay solid and I touch you and you're solid, I'm going to go through my approximations really quickly. If I see fluent behavior, right? So there's a communication, and I might move on to sticking. Or like Kimberly said so well, if the animal leans in, that's a really big sign that I go, okay, well, one, animal's ready. Two, I'm probably reinforcing leaning behavior now and not sitting still behavior, but that's great. I need that behavior to get to this injection. And I might be able to get to one of those injections that's pushed in. So I'm a big proponent of asking those questions, having that communication, going, you ready? Here it comes. And it's really just like any other cue, right? Once the animal hears touching in the environment, what's a consequence? But a butt gets touched. Once that's there, what's a consequence after that? There's a reinforcer attached. And maybe we can have the discussion in a bar somewhere later on that maybe the touch becomes a secondary reinforcer because it always gets backed up in the primary. I like the communication piece of it constantly. And so it really is the question, you ready? This is what's going to happen. You cool with that? All good. Here's a reinforcer for it. Thank you for participating. Here comes the injection. You ready? Yep, I'm staying in my position. Beautiful. Let's get out of here. And for me, species fill in the blank, right? It doesn't matter if it's cheetahs or sea lions or animals that can hear, I guess, would be there.
Just there's some people in the chat here. So Meg Dye said marine mammal person here. She agrees. I think that was back when I was saying marine mammal people. Is this new to us? Suzanne Smith was here. She said, I'm here. And then we have Jolson said, with marine mammals, we mostly did not use them. But like she was saying, the criteria would be set with the animals as they were conditioned with. We found it helpful with marine mammals that had limited eyesight, but without the additional stimulus, quote, touch. They appeared more anxious or resistant to what came next. But with regular sighted ones, we conditioned those behaviors without using the word. So that was the criteria for which worked for them. Oh, okay. So I just wanted to read the chat, so because people were in there. But yeah, I think it's a good conversation. And Ryan, still, I see you. I got the hang of the hands.
I see you too, Justin.
I met your
just,
hand. I do see you. I do, but
someone said that to me the other day. I was having a bit of a hard time or something, and they said, "I see you." I was like, "That's such a nice thing to say." I feel seen. I feel seen. So thank you, Justin. I just want to say where my mind goes with all of the conversations really today, and especially what Kim said about it being a language, and Vouda said about it being a cue or a reinforcer. And then my mind goes, well, what is that language? And it's the language of the science. It's the language of the science of learning. And what are some of our tools? The ones that is consistently coming to my mind during all of these conversations today is the smallest meaningful unit of behavior, which is the ABC. So we think about, where does the word touch fit in there? I cue animal to come over, animal puts its bum against the fence, I say touch, so now it's a consequence, but that consequence becomes the next antecedent. Touch means they push a little bit more, I touch them, we give them a piece of food. So if you can reach for your toolbox and get those ABCs out, you'll find that it fit that word touch, may or may not, film it, see what your animal does. But it's both it can be both a reinforcer. If you film it and you watch your animal, you might be being Charlie Brown, but if your animal is consistently coming over and then you're saying touch, it could be a reinforcer. And then it becomes a cue as well. So I like to do what Vouda says and say, what does that look like? And that's where my mind consistently goes with all these questions. And I just remove voluntary, remove touch, and just say, what does that look like? Where does it fit into our language? And what is our language? And it's the science of learning. So I just wanted to add that to build on everything that everyone's contributed so far, hopefully.
I like it. So we have a few minutes left. I don't know, is there anyone that has, if you want to change gears to a different topic or a different question or comment, is there any other hands that are going to go up here before we come to the end?
I just want to say that I think our everyone here is a learner and working really hard to improve the lives of animals and humans. We might be working in a zoo team and building a culture, and I just think that's super cool. And I think the community is super cool. And I've been a member of ABMA now for 7, 8, 9 years. As soon as I heard about it, I joined. And with that mission, I know our mission at Animal Training Academy is the same, just to improve the lives of learners. And we often break that down into non-human or human, but just gratitude to the ABMA for the huge positive impact they're having on everyone here, but then what people take away from today and they share with their colleagues, and their colleagues make change, and then it all goes back to the animals. So I think this is just super cool that we're doing this, and thank you, Justin and Chris and Ellie, if you hear this, and everyone else on Vouda, I know is involved in the ABA in some capacity. I'm not knowledgeable enough to comment accurately there, but everyone that contributes, it's just super cool.
Well, thank you. That's a good reinforcer to all of us ABMA folks, for sure. And we're always looking to get, I kind of got hooked on the organization because we are always looking for new ways to share the knowledge. And I love to be challenged. Just this conversation today, like learning how people use the word touch, just something simple like that. I've learned so much over the years with ABMA. So with that, perfect timing, Ryan. Thank you. Chris just did in the chat, he added a link to a survey. And it's just for us to gather feedback from everybody here on how we can make this Zoom better for next week 3, 4 next year. But also reach out to us. Chris and I think currently on the Zoom, the only board members at the time, but there's lots of people here that are members of ABMA and involved in different ways. Reach out to all of us or any of us if you have other ideas, because to your point, Ryan, like we're always trying to connect people. Oh, there's Sandy too. Sandy's on the board. So if you go on our website, there's ways to connect with us there. If you want to connect with an individual on the board, there's emails. If anybody wants to share their contact information in the chat too, feel free to do so. But I want to thank definitely everybody for coming, joining. Any last thoughts, Wouter? Final thoughts?
You know, it's been a great talk, and I think I love the cooperation of everybody, right? We're talking about cooperative care, but I think us working together is the next level of cooperative care. We could do this all ourselves and keep it to ourselves and then present it once a year, or we can keep sharing the information and the knowledge we have, and together we'll elevate this profession we have, not by ourselves. And I think that's the coolest thing about ABMA and about these webinars and stuff, is that we're all learning together, and it doesn't matter what you're doing or where you're at in your journey as a learner. I love the organization, and I think this format's really cool for everybody. So thanks everybody for participating and being part of it. I'm so humbled by everybody being here.
Well said. And yeah, to your point, actually, maybe just think of it. We always have a really good conference. If you've ever been there, I think everybody would agree. ABMA conferences are super welcoming, regardless of experience level or what animals you work with. So I always promote coming to the conference if you can. But in 2023, we're trying to find even more ways to connect and network. This is just one example. So we have podcasts and Zooms, and if you have any other ideas, please reach out to us. I see Chris's hand.
Yeah, thanks for that. Creeping in the background here. Well, yeah, speaking of conference, here's the cool logo that we have for next year, which is super, super awesome. So come to Nashville, hang out with us. The question I had, Justin, and I'm going to put us on the spot if we don't actually know the answer to this question, but maybe you do. We've been recording this, and we know a lot of people are registering for these, but they might not necessarily be able to attend because who knows what decided to be sick or weird on exhibit today because of the nature of our jobs. So how is this video going out? When might people expect that they can get this and maybe send it to other people or something like that? Do you know?
My understanding, what I do know is this is brand new. So like I said at the very beginning, we're the guinea pigs for the first Behavior Month Zoom. My understanding is that this will be shared. We're recording, so it will be shared later. So I would say stay tuned on our social media page, probably specifically Facebook, for links and ways that you can view or share with your teammates that weren't able to be here. But we will share it for sure.
Cool. That was my assumption, but I just wanted to check. Cool. Thanks.
And I wished I knew more. All right. Anybody else have any last final words? No? All right. Well, stay tuned for that cool ring video for tomorrow. Right, Sue? It's a good one. So thank you all for coming to the first Zoom, and we will have next Friday. So the Zooms are going to be every Friday during Behavior Month. So we'll have new participants, new guest speaker, new topic, and lots more discussion. So thank you all, and hopefully we'll see you next week. Bye, everyone.
See you guys. I see you all.